Hello. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health. Our guest this evening is Cindy Hsu from WCBS TV in New York. This episode is going to feature real talk about suicide attempts and suicidal ideation. My name is Neil Parekh. That's my co-host, Don Helmrich. We are live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and my website. Thank you to everyone who has supported this show over the last several months and who have people who have reached out specifically after we announced this show. This is probably the most challenging show that Dawn and I have hosted so far. We're so grateful that Cindy is with us today. She shared her story of surviving a suicide attempt. It happened in 2015. She shared her story in 2021. Dawn and I are going to be sharing our own stories of ideation, which is very different, and we'll explain the differences. But this is the first time we're talking about it out loud in public. So thank you for all of your support. I want to right off the bat make sure that people know about 988 Lifeline. We will repeat this and show this several times during the show. But if you or someone you know has had thoughts of hurting themselves, please reach out. You can reach them via call. Just dialing 988 or going to 988lifeline.org. Professionals are there to help, to listen. Dawn and I are not counselors. We're not professionals. We can be empathetic, but that's really the extent to what we can do. So we want to make sure that if you need the help, you get the help you need. And like I said, we will repeat that several times during the show. And of course, this is a big trigger warning for folks who, might have concerns. We know people who have lost friends and loved ones. And if now is not the right time for you to watch this show, please be kind to yourself. And, if you can come back to it later, that's great. But as I said, we are going to be talking about some very difficult issues, some very personal issues. Dawn, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm really excited about this show tonight. I really I've thought about this so much since Cindy agreed to do this show, and how we under talk about this subject. We really shy away from it. We're nervous to have candid conversations like this, and I really think this is going to be a really important topic for us to cover today.
Absolutely. It's really something. I know for me personally, when we started this show, it was a big deal for me to even say the words anxiety and depression in public, and to say that I was seeing a therapist. That was a big deal. I, of course, knew that at some point I will likely share my story, my experience with suicidal ideation. And it wasn't until Cindy agreed to be on the show that this all kind of came together. I realized that this was the time and the place that we would do that. So we will certainly get to that in a little bit. I want to welcome some of the folks who are watching first. Some of our very loyal viewers, people who've been with us since the beginning. For folks who may be new, who may be watching for the first time, we stream this show twice a month, the second and fourth Thursdays of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Jonathan is saying hi from New York, offering greetings. My sister is watching from Bellevue, Washington. She says hello. Apollo, a colleague of mine at Digimentors, is watching from Philadelphia. So keen to see this show. Dawn, you want to give a big hello?
Yes, my husband, who's watching in the other room in Milwaukee, home of the Fonz, who we saw last night, which was pretty cool.
And my mom is watching from Hastings-on-Hudson, a very important topic. And Denise Fortner, a friend of yours, right?
Yes, a friend of mine.
Thank you for doing these shows. And a friend of both of ours, Kate Easton. Good evening. Be kind to yourselves as well. One more hello before we start digging into the show. John Wood.
Yeah, take a minute.
Hit you, right?
Yeah, take a minute.
The reason I'm hesitating is that I haven't talked to John in 34 years. He was a friend of mine. I did a summer program at Boston College, and just recently he reached out over Instagram, and I had to say, "Is John? I knew a John Wood at Boston. Is this you? You know?" And we actually haven't talked yet. We haven't connected beyond just a few messages on Instagram.
Well, John, obviously it's very meaningful that you showed up today, so thank you for that.
Very meaningful. Thank you, John, and I look forward to connecting with you later, soon. Absolutely soon. With that, I want to, again, our guest is Cindy Xu. She introduced to me by Sri Srinivasan, who founded this firm, Digimentors. So thankful for the support we get from Digimentors to produce the show and for amplifying the show, sharing it with folks. A lot of my colleagues come and watch, so thank you so much. Sri has known Cindy for a number of years, and he put us in touch. I want to share a quick video that shows Cindy's story, and then we'll bring Cindy on.
What I learned through this is that no matter how good somebody's life looks from the outside, they could be going through hell.
Cindy Xu's life did look good from the outside. An anchor and reporter at WCBS in New York and a mother of a young daughter. In 2015, she found herself in a life-and-death battle with mental illness, a battle no one saw coming.
You know me, Dana. We've known each other for a million years, and I'm like the happy person at work, always.
She shared her story with her close friend and colleague anchor Dana Tyler, describing how a coworker sensed something was wrong.
She said, "Are you okay?" I said, "No." And that was the first time I actually let down the wall. And that's when she said, "Do you need to take some time off?" And I said, "Yes."
At home, her illness deepened.
Bottom line, I attempted suicide weeks after I had left work. I attempted, and the hope was I wouldn't wake up.
She did wake up in the emergency room.
You know, coming from an Asian family, we don't talk about things like this. You don't sit there and say, "I'm not feeling well, I feel down." It's more like you don't want to be a burden to anybody.
Cindy spent 2 weeks in a psychiatric hospital where therapy and group meetings helped her get better. Psychiatrist Christine Moutier hopes her candor will encourage others to seek those resources.
There are 1 in 4 Americans who are going through similar types of mental health experiences, and we just need to shine a light and take the stigma out of these topics.
For Cindy, the cloud is lifted, but her work continues.
I continue to see a psychiatrist every month. I'm still on medication, and I need that. But I feel great.
She's active with suicide prevention groups and speaks on panels, spreading the word there's no shame in asking for help. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
What a great intro and great framing for the show. Let's go ahead and bring Cindy on and ask her to share a little bit more. Cindy?
Hi.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cindy.
Joining
so
us.
much.
Well, thank you for doing this show. I'm honored that you asked me to be on. I haven't seen that story for so long, but it was very difficult to have that conversation with my colleague Dana. And but let's see, that was in 2021, 2, 3, 4. So it's been 3 years since I felt comfortable talking publicly about it. And in these 3 years, I've done nothing but try to learn more about mental illness and spread the word that it's just as important as physical illness. And there's so much help out there. You know, I mean, there's so many experts and people who all they want to do is help you. And that's the word I want to get out, that there is hope and you're not alone. You definitely are not alone.
And I want to frame your blog post that you wrote for this show, which we'll share with people. Forever grateful for my second chance. I almost ruined everything in 2015 when severe depression hit and I attempted suicide. Rosie was only 11 years old. I knew nothing about mental illness at the time or why people needed to see therapists. But I want to emphasize two things in that. One, that you are grateful to be here. And you lead your blog post with talking about your visit to see your daughter at Cornell, which I thought was great. My daughter is actually 11 years old now. So when I saw that, it gave me a different perspective in terms of where you were in 2015. But tell us how, where we heard a bit about what happened. Tell us a little bit more about where you are today. How are things going?
Things are going really, really well. I mean, I'm still at the same television station. I anchor a show, which is exactly what I was doing way back then when I got sick. I've been at the same station for more than 30 years. And one thing I want to make clear is that, a lot of times people say, well, why did the person attempt suicide? There has to be a reason. And what I've learned is there's usually not one reason. It's usually the result of a mental illness. My mental illness was depression, I believe, brought on by everything from work stress to fear to all these different things that just kind of could make a perfect storm. And then this is what can happen. But I'm doing really well at work. I was hospitalized for 3 months. I was out of work. I left work, attempted suicide, and then was hospitalized and got better. But I was out of work for 3 months, came back, and now I'm on the national board of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, very involved with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I just, it's almost like a new purpose for me is to spread the word that there's help. And there's so many people that want to help you, whether you're the person struggling or the family or loved one of the person struggling.
That's really great, Cindy.
You mentioned.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead, Dawn.
I just, something resonated with me when we started, really talking about this, how under talked about it is. Can you just speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. I think the whole reason I even wanted to talk about it was right during COVID. And for the first time, everyone knew what it was like to be isolated. So that's kind of what gave me the courage to say, everybody knows what it's like to be all by yourself. And it can lead to a mental illness that can lead to your life just going, like this. So I'm so sorry, Dawn. I'm like, I forgot the question. Tell me the question again.
Yeah, no, I just asked, just talking about how under talked about it is and how important it is that we have these conversations.
Yeah. So that's why I really learned how under talked about it is when I finally talked about it. And then everyone and their mother was coming to me and saying, I am also on antidepressants. I am also depressed. I have also gone through this, or my mother has, or my friend has. And you really realize, the statistics are incredible, how many people have been touched by mental illness and how we just can't talk about it because there's so much shame and people think it's weakness, and it is not weakness. You get cancer, you go see a doctor. The only difference with whether it's bipolar, whether it's depression, whether it's anxiety, is that you don't see scars. You don't see it from the outside. I think the more we talk about your show, that's why I'm so inspired by both of you for doing this show. The more we talk about it, the more it's going to be normalized. And one day it's not going to be a big deal to say, I have a mental illness. openly.
I think that's, we're certainly working toward that. That's our goal in starting this show back in February, to lower the stigma around mental illness and to normalize that conversation. I have to say that, coming up to this show, it's now late October. Normalizing the conversation around surviving a suicide attempt, or even ideation, it almost seems like another level. Did you see that kind of difference in terms of talking about mental illness and talking about your experience? And I'm trying to be very careful with my language. Surviving a suicide attempt. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I definitely see a difference. I think mental illness people are getting much more comfortable, especially as well-known people are coming forward, and Simone Biles and all these different people. But when you say suicide, I think there's still so much misunderstanding and so much blame on the person who took their life. As someone who was at that place, it's a pain that I can only speak for me. As you said, we're not experts, but we all have lived experience of things. The disease of depression takes over your brain, and a cloud comes in that makes you think the world will be better without me. My 11-year-old daughter, Rosie, would be better without me, and would be better with my brother, who has a more traditional, I'm a single mom. She's adopted. My brother, he has, 3 wonderful kids and a wife, and not that I'm unstable, but I have a non-traditional life, not like everybody. So the depression in my mind told me that, and it tells you you're worthless. And so all these things. And so one thing I hope is that people, when they've experienced a suicide in their family, is first of all to know it's not your fault. It's not like you could have done one thing and you would have prevented it. But also, I just hope people are not angry at the person, because that person was in a lot of pain.
Thank you, Cindy.
Clearly.
Thank you.
Clearly. And we know that there are a lot of people out there who have lost loved ones to suicide. Even and it's good. I can't remember the detail, but someone I spoke to said that their partner found their mother. So someone who was my age or so, and certainly it is a pain, and having that empathy is so key, is so important.
Can I just tell you right then, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention is such an amazing resource for anyone who has been touched by suicide. You can go on their website, and they tell you how to have conversations with people if you're concerned that person might attempt suicide. You can go on there and find out what are the first steps after a suicide has occurred, step by step. There are workshops. There's so many resources. And actually, when I got out of the hospital, one of the first things I did, because I'm a reporter, is research suicide and mental illness like crazy. And one of the reasons I got involved with AFSP was because that was the website that had so much help that was right there at your fingertips. And everyone involved with the organization understands. So
absolutely. And that's the association,
the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. It's AFSP, and you go on the website, and it's an amazing resource for anybody.
Absolutely. We're just going to share that for folks. AFSP.org is the website, and we're looking at it right now. Is there anything in particular that you want to call out for us? I was showing a few pages. Oh, put your glasses. Sorry. But we looked at, went to the page of having thoughts of suicide,
Mhm.
reaching out as the first step to safety.
Exactly. And again, it talks about 988. If you're
Yes.
looking for help, if you need to get involved with groups, there's also, and there's very, they really try to reach out to all different groups. There's a lot on LGBTQ that right there. You've got the Veteran Crisis Lifeline. There are, we have what's called Talk Saves Lives, where one of us or somebody with lived experience will go to your company or your school or your business and give a talk about saving people's lives. And it's done in different languages, and it can be honed into certain groups, and it's free. So there's just, I can't say enough about, and real stories. What's your story? People will actually, you can go there and you can watch videotapes of people sharing their stories right there. And sometimes you just need to hear that one person you can relate to make all the difference.
That's so great. That is so great. I want to ask Dawn, if you don't mind. You wrote a blog post as well for this show. We'll pull it up. Ask you to talk a little bit about it.
Sure.
Talking about suicide and suicidal ideation is a good thing. And these words, Dawn, to read them out loud. I remember one time driving myself to a set of train tracks and sitting on them, willing a train to come and plow me over. I remember feeling very alone, scared, and weak when I had these thoughts. Thank you, first of all, for sharing this. I want folks to know that I look up to Dawn. She has been my rock in this process for years. Before this show, we've known each other for several years, and she's been very forthcoming and very open about her mental health challenges. But this is the first time that you're talking about your experience with ideation.
It is, and again, thank you, Cindy, because this is just a topic that I think is really, really difficult to discuss, and I think it's because we feel very isolated and alone when we're so deep in that depression, and it feels like no one else on the planet feels that way, even though, like, now I know that isn't true. And it's funny because Neil and I had a similar experience with our spouses. When I was talking to my husband about, suicidal ideation, he said to me, I think that a lot of people, most people who are often reflective about their lives and their experiences have had some kind of suicidal ideation. And when he said that, I was like, whoa, dude, you're probably right. And I hadn't really thought about it in that kind of perspective before. And so for me, this was right after I got raped, that I just, and when I talk about in my blog is like, I did everything in my power to stay alive. I complied with everything that those men forced me to do because I wanted to stay alive. And afterwards, all I could think about was how I wanted to be dead. And it was very confusing to me because I didn't understand, how could I be having these thoughts when all I wanted to do was get out of that situation alive. So I think, if I would have been able to share that back then, I feel like I would have felt less alone. I wouldn't have had, and I had lots of suicidal ideation after that as well. And not that I wouldn't have, maybe, but I think I would have felt less alone. I think I would have felt less like I was a weak person for feeling that way if I started talking about it and other people were sharing their experience as well, which is why I just think this is so incredibly important.
Don, thank you for sharing your story. I know it's incredibly difficult. And, you know, I just wanted to bring up, if you want to talk about what suicidal ideation is, because I remember the first time I ever heard that term was when I was hospitalized, and every day the nurse would say, "Are you having suicidal ideation?" I'm thinking, what is that? So if you want to explain.
Yeah, I
Sure.
can definitely. So suicidal ideation is different than suicide attempt, or yes, it's different than a suicide attempt. It's thoughts that you experience in your head. They can be fleeting thoughts, they can be pretty intense thoughts, but you're not creating a plan. Oftentimes suicide attempts involve a plan ahead of time. And sometimes people just like think really quickly, and other times it like lasts longer, or something like drives you to do something. So that's really what it is.
Yeah, I actually included it. I'll share my blog post in just a moment. But the definition I saw was from the National Center for Biotechnology Information. And the key distinction, there's actually, even within suicidal ideation, there's passive and active suicidal ideation. And, you know, passive ideation involves a general desire to die without any concrete method or plan or intention or action. People could just have thoughts that I wish I could just disappear. I don't want to wake up. Active suicidal ideation involves a detailed plan and a determined intent to act on suicidal ideas. And I think that's actually a really good kind of segue. Dawn and my stories are, I think, the difference between active suicidal ideation and passive suicidal ideation. Dawn actually got in the car and went to train tracks in this instance. The way that I framed my post, can you imagine yourself stepping in front of a bus? I did. There have been 2 times in my life that I've experienced passive suicidal ideation. In both instances, those thoughts were fleeting but frightening. And I have to say that they actually are still frightening just to think about it and go back to it. There were 2 specific instances, and I want to be clear that I'm sharing these 2 instances. Those were probably the most explicit ones. I've had other thoughts since then that are even more passive and kind of more vague. And in fact, even just 2 weeks ago, it was the holiday Monday, I was just so overwhelmed with work. Dawn, we talked on the phone that morning, and I wasn't planning anything, and I wasn't putting anything in my hands, but I just had that overwhelming feeling. The first time this happened was actually in 2001 or 2000 rather. And they're both work related. I felt despondent over work. I felt like I hadn't lived up to expectations. I was working as a journalist at the time, Cindy. I'd gone to India with President Clinton on his trip to South Asia, and I didn't do enough while I was there. I didn't produce enough. So when I came home, I said, okay, when the Indian Prime Minister comes, I'll do more. I'll make up for it. So I put even more pressure on myself. And when I couldn't live up to that expectation, one day I just pictured myself standing on a bridge near where I lived in Tacoma Park, Maryland. Not a George Washington Bridge, for New York folks, or big span, but it was like over a gorge or something. But I just kind of mentally saw myself there, and very quickly that thought went away. But I was frightened. The second time was when I was in Seattle, and again, I had finished organizing some event for a group I work with, and I actually talked a little bit about this in an earlier episode on workplace depression. I had worked with a nonprofit in Seattle, and I ended up not returning emails and phone calls, ghosting my colleagues for several weeks. part of what happened is that I was sitting in a park on campus in between. I'd seen one therapist. It didn't really work out. I was waiting for another one to schedule. And we were several hundred yards from where the buses come on campus. But I literally was sitting on a park bench, and I pictured myself stepping onto the street in front of an oncoming bus. And that's scary. And these are not words that I thought I would ever share. Never thought I would talk to people about it. But to just put a point on Cindy, how much your story means to me personally, and I don't want to speak for Dawn, but I think I can in terms of how much you opened this up for us. I was able to tell my daughter about these experiences. I kind of had to, because she Googles me and she looks at what I do online, but I wanted her to hear it from me. I wanted her to so I could answer questions for her. And that's something that I certainly was never thought I'd be able to get there. I want to ask you a quick question and then go to Dawn. Can you talk about your conversations with your daughter about this and what that was like?
I'm glad you asked me that, considering your daughter is the same age my daughter was when I attempted suicide, 11 years old. When this happened, as I said in my story, that she was away at camp. So, and this had been planned in my head, so I knew she wouldn't be there. After I attempted, and my mother actually had come to New York to help take care of her, because I had been going downhill. And I actually asked my mom, please come and help me because I can't function. So when I went into the hospital and when it happened, we decided just to tell her that like mommy messed up her medication. And the whole time I was in the hospital, we didn't tell her what it was. We just said, mommy's just, getting taken care of. And I actually would talk to her on the phone from the hospital and, tell her what I was doing, which there's a lot of therapies that really surprised me that help, like music therapy and art therapy and all these things that I never gave any credence to in my life. And then here it was really helping me. And I would say, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And she thought I was having a blast because all these therapies sounded very entertaining when you don't put in the mental illness part of it. And then when I got out of the hospital and I was a lot better and I, got to recovery, I asked the child psychologist, how should I deal with this with Rosie? And they said, it depends on your relationship with your child. The answer is going to be different for every parent. It's not going to be comfortable for every child or every parent to discuss this openly. Rosie and I, since it's only us, have always been really open. Like, here's the deal. So they told me how to just, you can just tell them, we went over it. And I just said that when this happened, mommy did this and I did it on purpose. And then she was like, you did it on purpose? And I said, yes. And then I said, I explained what depression was. I explained, and they also told me to tell her, it's not your fault. There's nothing you need to do. I have doctors. I have medication. I have a whole team taking care of mommy's mental health. You just need to be a child. And I just want to explain what happened. And any questions? And she didn't have any questions. And then as time goes, she's turning 21 this Saturday. Over there, she's become a mental health advocate. She speaks very openly about it now as as someone who knows somebody who wanted to end their life. And she's the person everyone talks to now. And I always check on her mental health. I'm so happy that she agreed to see a therapist when the college stress started getting too much. I used to think gap years were like ridiculous. And after she graduates, she wants a gap year. I'm like, take a gap year. So now I'm so proud of her. She's so well adjusted, but I'm always asking questions. I'm always checking on her and she's always checking on me. And that's what we need to do for all of us.
Sure. Dawn?
Yeah, I just I wanted to make a point about how everybody is entitled to their experience. And they're you know, oftentimes whenever I talk about mental health or like my experience with being raped, you know, a lot of times people will be like, oh, mine, what I had, you know, I was molested as a child is not as bad as what happened to you. And I just want to say how important it is to recognize that if you had feelings of suicidal ideation, or you survived an attempted suicide, or you were passive, or you were active, all of those words um, don't negate what your experience was or what you went through. And I think that that's really important, because I don't want anybody to feel as though what their experience wasn't valid, or wasn't meaningful for them at the time that they experienced that. And Neil and I have had that conversation, because I think that I think that's so important to not lessen or diminish what you felt at that time when you felt it. Right, Cindy, I can see you nodding your head. You want to speak to that too?
No, I just completely understand. People will compare their own experiences and say, well, that person has a perfect life. What do they have to complain about? Why would they want to end their life? And the other thing I really learned through this is you never know what people are going through. You can have all the money in the world. Your life can look so perfect from the outside, and you could be going through hell.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, the conversation, what, you know, Dawn and I have talked about, and Cindy, I don't know how much we shared this with you earlier, but a lot of my shared experience with Dawn is that we're both survivors of sexual assault, you know, and folks who have watched the show know the story. It obviously there's a connection with mental health. I was abused by a neighbor when I was 7 years old. Dawn was violently raped and left for dead 30 years ago this year.
31.
Right?
Yeah.
31 years
31
ago.
years ago.
You know, that we know better. I know better now than to, you know, worry about my experience was not as bad as Dawn's, or, you know, it's not the equivalent. That's not the issue at all. And you know, what we're trying to do is to make sure, I mean, in the same kind of vein, you know, my ideation was passive, Dawn's was active. You survived an attempt, and those differences don't matter at the end of the day. And what I'm thankful for is that we do have support around us. We have loving families. We have an infrastructure that's built up, organizations, advocacy groups that we can reach out to. And hopefully this platform, this conversation might serve as that support for someone who might need it. I do want to bring in a couple of comments from folks, and I'll just acknowledge that my mom and sister seem to be watching very intently. My mom says, Cindy, your story is motivating for so many people. Glad that this difficult subject is being brought to light. And my sister shared that she lost two friends to suicide, you know, one in high school and one in college. And Amy, I'm so sorry about that. I had forgotten. I think I remember when it happened. And so I'm so glad that you can watch the show and that you can stick with this. I'm sure this is bringing up a lot of feelings for you. Apollo, who is a colleague of mine at Digimentors, the more Cindy shoes we have, the smaller the stigma around surrounding mental health, especially because it can be deadly. I appreciate you because your example can radiate to other circles, especially professional circles, where mental health is seen as career ending. And I know that Apollo has often said, has commented in other shows, that people can reach out to the employee assistance line. That's what he has done, and he's used their number. It's a great first step. And then we're just getting thank yous from Amy, and she thinks you're amazing, Dawn. I do too.
Me too.
And you know, they're thanking us for talking about ideation. Jim also says thank you, Cindy, Neil, and Dawn, for sharing your experiences with suicide and suicidal ideation. It's so important for everyone to know that they're not alone. Let's lessen that stigma. And this is what I'm talking about, is that we have people like Jim in our lives. We have people like my mom and my sister, who I actually called. They didn't know about this till Saturday or Sunday when I called them, and gave them a heads up. And so this is opening conversations within families, and I think this is really, really important. We also want to make sure that we can provide resources for people, and really provide some. Again, we're not therapists, we're not counselors, but there is some information that we can offer that might help. A few warning signs for suicide. Dawn, do you mind sharing some of these?
Yeah, so these come from the Center for Disease Control. So increased alcohol and drug use, aggressive behaviors, withdrawal from friends, family, and community. And I think that's a big one, because a lot of times when people start to isolate themselves, they don't want to talk to their family, they don't want to talk to their friends. Dramatic mood swings, impulsive or reckless behavior, which is a lot of what was happening with me when I was having suicidal ideation. Was I was being very impulsive and lots of reckless behavior. So I think those are all really good warning signs.
And then some behaviors are a psychiatric emergency. This is when you should call 988, or even if you have to, 911. Collecting and saving pills or buying a weapon, giving away possessions, tying up loose ends, like organizing personal papers or paying off debts, saying goodbye to friends and family. I know someone who actually went through some of these steps, and was very organized and really knew what they wanted to do, and told a best friend this is what they were going to do. They did not follow through on this, thankfully, but this is it's very real. There are a few ways to approach a crisis. We'll add these to our website so folks can review it when they have time. But we want to just make sure. And again, we always want to put some data in front of folks. So this is a few numbers. Over 49,000 people died by suicide in 2022. It's one death every 11 minutes. And many adults think about suicide or attempt suicide. 13.2 million seriously thought about suicide. 3.8 million make a plan. 1.6 million attempted. These are reported numbers. And I think that question, to Jim's point, how many people are experiencing this or thinking about it, or even passively, if you lower that bar, how many people have just thought, I don't need to be here anymore. I'm done, and don't say anything. Don't reach out to anyone. Don't ask for help. Those numbers have to be higher, I think.
Yes, I agree. And just to with all these different things you put up, I can relate to so many of them. The giving away the possessions. I started giving things back to friends. Somebody had given me a watch, lent me a watch. I gave it back to her because I knew what I was going to do. And the big one, as Dawn, as you said, the isolation, the just shutting down. All the person usually wants to do is go into their bed, pull the shades, and go to sleep. And the other thing I'll say is that when somebody does talk about, I want to kill myself, I want to, first of all, we don't want to say commit suicide, by the way. That's when we talk about language, it's
yes.
Attempt, suicide or die by suicide, but it is not a crime. It is
Yes.
not something like someone's committing a crime. It is the result of an illness most times. But just take it seriously when someone talks about it. And also, if you are concerned about someone, ask directly. Use the word suicide. I know people think, oh, that's going to make them think about it, or that's not what the research shows, according to AFSP. But if you just say, so how you feeling? And they seem like they're okay, but you really are concerned for their safety, don't brush it off. Just ask them directly, are you thinking of suicide? And take what they say seriously.
That's great advice. That's great advice, Cindy. I want to bring in a comment. Apollo said that everyone, quoting Dawn, everyone is entitled to their experience, and he needed to hear that today, Dawn. So thank you for sharing that. And just more love for Dawn. Dawn has a beautiful vision of how life can get better for survivors. You really are. You really are. Well, as a reminder for folks, Shining Light on Shadows, a candid conversation about mental health, streams twice a month, usually the second and fourth Thursdays of the month. And at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. Our guest today has been Cindy Hsu. She's a news anchor with WCBS TV in New York. And she shared her story earlier in the program, and we played a package that was produced by her station. When we're done with the show, if you joined us late, you can watch it from the very beginning on the same channels you're watching now, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, and on my website. On Instagram, we'll be sharing a clip of the show and a link to find the full episode. But I do want to give folks a heads up about our next episode coming up. That's going to be equally special. November 14th. Our guest is going to be the Blue Flower Curtain. No, they're not a guest, but we are going to be featuring and letting people know about Dawn's book, The Blue Flower Curtain. And joining us will be her daughter, Brittany Helmrich. November 14th, Thursday, November 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I have my copy here. And I promise, Dawn, by the time we get to your show, it won't look like this. It will be well worn, well read through. But the Blue Flower Curtain is available on Amazon. It is Dawn's account of being raped and violently raped and left for dead. And she went through court transcripts and did research, reading some of that for the first time to be able to put it in the book. So we're looking forward to that conversation. We hope that you'll be able to join us in just a few weeks. We certainly have a few other things that we'd like to share with you, with folks. There's some more specific data points. Dawn, if you want to share some of these statistics.
Yeah, and sometimes depending upon the topic, I have to really dig to find statistics around suicide. They're all over the place, and these, I believe, are from the CDC and from SAMHSA. So suicide rates increased approximately 36% between 2000 and 2022. So 36% in 22 years is huge. Suicide was responsible for 49,476 deaths in 2022, which is about one death every 11 minutes. And in 2022, an estimated 13.2 million adults seriously thought about suicide, 3.8 million planned a suicide attempt, and 1.6 million attempted suicide. And finally, in 2022, suicide was among the top 9 leading causes of death for people ages 10 to 64. It was the second leading cause of death for people 10 to 14 and 25 to 34.
And then there's some action items, and this is a little bit more detailed than when we go into on a usual show, but we felt that we wanted to make sure to leave people with some concrete steps that they can do. And Cindy, if any of these resonate with you, please let us know. It's certainly strengthening economic support, because financial insecurity is certainly something that can be a trigger. Creating protective environments, reducing access to lethal means. I translate that to mean handguns. Creating healthy organizational policies and culture, particularly at work, and reducing substance use through community-based policies and practices. I see you nodding your head.
All of them. And when we talk about create healthy organizational policies and culture, as I said, both AFSP and NAMI have programs that will go to your work and help educate people and the bosses on down. And it has to come from the bosses. And they need to know the power they have when they say, when you need a mental health day, take a mental health day. It's okay when you need that time, because if, like I said, if you're sick with, time you need to take off for a very, very serious physical illness, it's just as important to take off for mental, and it needs to come from the top.
Do you think that people people talk about this in terms of the workplace, Cindy, with younger generations coming in, is there more of an acceptance or understanding of taking that mental health day? Because I don't
Yes.
think that's the case for Dawn and I in terms of our experience.
No, and I think it is a generational thing. I think that's one of the great things that the younger generations have been taught, are learning about mental illness and are learning how important it is and are talking openly about it. So yeah, things need to change. And I think things are changing because, even companies need to offer these types of services. That's what people are looking for too. What kind of mental health services do you have when you go look for jobs and things like that? So it's changing, not fast enough, but it is changing.
So my mom is a fan, Cindy. She sees you on CBS, which is always good to hear. But I want to bring greetings from a friend of yours, a friend of both of ours. Sri is watching from Manhattan, and thank you for sharing your stories, our stories. And I know that he actually was included. You've done a whole series called Breaking the Stigma.
Yes.
Through CBS, and there was a recent special report on social media. I know Sri was a part of that.
Oh yeah, he's my technology guru. Anything I need to know, so he's our expert. And he talked about how social media can affect mental health.
Absolutely, and we have a link on our website for the show. We have a link. We created a playlist of all of those episodes, so folks can find them and watch. But thank you. And while Sri's on the screen via comment, I want to, and I do this every show, but it really is heartfelt. When I went to him with this idea last November that I'd like to produce this show on mental health, can I do this under the auspices of Digimentors? Can I have the time and space, with everything else we're doing? He didn't hesitate for a moment. He actually told me to go find a co-host, and I scored when Dawn said yes, or stepped in to co-host. The story is that I asked Dawn to be a guest, and she said, "Well, how about if I co-host the show?" And of course, that was a great move. But really, it's being able to talk with colleagues, and I remember even the first time I told Sri and our colleagues that I suffer from anxiety and occasional depression, it was a huge weight that was being lifted off my shoulders, and to be able to share this internally makes a huge difference. So Sri, thank you. Even little things, sharing the show and encouraging people to watch has such a big impact. So I want to thank you for that. Apollo says, sending much love and kudos for your bravery and strength. Courage comes in many ways. You're an awesome example of it. So thank you, Apollo. I want to give you a quick break, Cindy. We'll take you off screen for a moment. And then when you come back, we'll ask you to just offer some final thoughts for folks. That is Cindy Shu, who has been our guest on Dawn. I have to say, one of the best episodes that we've had so far. We thought it'd be challenging, but I think it was one of the best.
I agree wholeheartedly. I really do. I think, I just think that it's such an important thing. And I think, we have to reduce that stigma. It's gonna help us continue to break that cycle and reduce that stigma. So yeah, really great. Really great.
And I know that even just for myself, it helps personally. I have gotten so much out of doing this show, talking about these issues, opening up conversations, not just at home I mean, I've talked about this with my wife, but talking with my daughter about these things, talking with colleagues, reaching out to my professional contacts. I've sent out emails regularly announcing different shows, and every now and then I've put in something about, I've had a very difficult week. My anxiety, my depression got the better of me, and the support that I've gotten, emails from people I never would have thought who would have reached out, and the text messages, the direct messages. I've gotten so much out of this show myself that it's been worth it just for that. Again, I want to give thanks to Digimentors. Digimentors is the consulting firm that Sri started, that I'm the vice president of events and communications, and they offer the time and space to do this show, which really means a lot. So thank you to Sri and all of my colleagues at Digimentors. I want to bring Cindy back up and have her share some final thoughts. Cindy, thank you again for being here. What do you want to leave people with in terms of quick recap?
I just want to say, if you are worried about someone, check on them. It could be a little text. I've been concerned about you. How are you? And then start that conversation. Really, really listen. And if you are having thoughts of suicide, signs of depression, there's so much help out there. And I think a lot of people are worried about, the cost of therapists and things like that. I just want to say Psychology Today, if you go to their website, they have you just look up, psychologists available that take insurance. And they have a whole list. That's how I found my daughters, all over the world. And they can, it can be by Zoom. So, and also know that sometimes people don't believe in therapy. Sometimes just, it takes a little bit of time, maybe to find the right one, but it's worth it, because you really need that person to listen to you, who is an expert and can help you work through this. And there is hope, and you're not alone.
Thank you so much, Cindy. There is hope, and you're not alone. I think if folks even just get that one message, it will be worth it. Our guest, of course, was Cindy Hsu, a news anchor with WCBS TV in New York. Dawn Helmrich is my co-host. She's in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I am in Springfield, Virginia. Thank you so much for making the time and space to join us today. And if you didn't have a chance to watch the show from the beginning, you can watch it in just a few moments after we finish the show, or share it with your friends and encourage them to watch as well. We're hoping that sharing our stories will help make a difference for someone that you love and that you care for, because everyone deserves your love. Thank you so much, Cindy. Thank you, Dawn. And we'll share Amy saying thank you for a great show. So thank you, Amy. Amy is my sister, and I appreciate your support. We'll see you in a few weeks when we feature Dawn's book, The Blue Flower Curtain, right here by my desk. And thank you for spending the evening with us. Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Cindy, so much.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.